Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another Retro RPG. And at the end of another week, and the end of another poll, we've got a very clear winner with Year of the Comet for Shadowrun. So I'll cover that on the desktop in a wee second. And as usual, I'll be back at the end of the video with some other channel related stuff and some other poll related stuff. But a wee reminder that if you'd like to help the channel out, you'd like to see these videos a week early, you'd like to become an honest to goodness fake Laird of Scotland, or various other things which I'm rolling out in the next couple of weeks, we've got a Patreon down in the description below. So if you check that out and see what we've got to offer, it'd be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at Year of the Comet. So, this is Year of the Comet. It's for Shadowrun 3rd edition. It came out in 2003 by Fanpro and WizKids, and is one of the licensed line of Shadowrun products after Fazza had licensed off the Shadowrun game, allowing other people to start publishing in their universe. Now, some think that this was the start of the decline of Shadowrun, that the classic Fazza stuff was absolutely great, but Year of the Comet itself is an absolutely great book, because it's one of these event books like Bug City, like Renraku Archaeology Shutdown, like so many that we've covered in the past, which the universe changes. So this is about the year 2061, which is the year that Halley's Comet returns to the skies. And it just happens to be the 50th anniversary of the Awakening. Although that doesn't quite work out to me, because I thought the Awakening was 2012. So it'd be 2062, not 2061. So it doesn't quite sync up. But the idea is solid, that this is a momentous year, and one of the huge things about it is that magic spikes again. So at the Awakening, magic spiked, and we started to get goblinization, the dragons awoke, wizards started being able to cast magic once again, etc, etc. That was the beginning of that. This is the start of a new phase, where the Shadowrun world is becoming even more magical. And it's an interesting idea. It's kind of moving away from the cyberpunk ethos that I really liked Shadowrun, which was elves and dwarves and dragons in a cyberpunk background, becoming far, far more magical. But it's nice stuff, especially as it handles the magic in a scientific manner. Anyway, let's have a look at the back cover. The sky is falling. The year 2061 marks the return of Halley's Comet and the 50th anniversary of the Awakening. Do you celebrate or run for cover? Each day brings a new surprise. Will you transform into a genetic changeling or fall prey to a doomsday cult? Will you be in Denver when the dragon runs amok, or in Japan when the Ring of Fire deals death to the Empire? Will you fight toxic spirits in the Yucatan, or run from the Walking Dead? The Year of the Comet shakes and stirs the world of Shadowrun, describing a series of events around which gamemasters and players can build entire adventures and campaigns. It details a new dragon, new spirits, and new genetic expressions that can affect your character. Year of the Comet is intended for gamemasters and players of all experience levels, for use with Shadowrun 3rd edition. So it's kind of detailing what we're going to encounter in here. We're going to encounter stuff about the new dragon, about doomsday cults, about a new type of genetic expression, genetic changelings. So let's have a look inside. The artwork remains of very fine quality, and they haven't really changed the layout from the earlier books. So we've got a table of contents here, but we don't really have the Shadowland introduction, which I loved in older books. In 1st and 2nd edition, the books were as if you were logging into the Shadowrunner database, or website, or however you want to phrase it, on the Matrix. And it would give you an idea of books that were coming, as files were currently being downloaded. It would give you idea of what was already available. So it was kind of hooking you into the idea that everything which had come out for Shadowrun was interconnected on this database. Anyway, we've got the introduction here, and talk about a new age. So we've first of all got the return of the comet, and what that means. And we talk through the year. So, history and hysteria, so what people think about it coming from the past. The night sky, smile for the telescope as people start to spot it in the sky. Spiritually speaking, so as it has an effect on magic. The probe race, as corporations race to send the first probe. And this is a big part where the players can get involved, because obviously in the Shadowrun universe, the corporations are fighting one another. There's lots of corporate espionage going on, and in something this high visibility, they are really fighting out to be the #1, because everybody's going to be watching their stuff. So we've got the probe race contenders, we've got Ares Macro Technologies, Seda Krupp, and Novatech, Proteus, Shiawise, Shibata Construction and Engineering, Yamatetsu. We've got various runners-up. We've got things here, news articles, where the Ares Giga probe struck by meteor, Novatech probe lost, probe hijacked, as different things happen. Yamatetsu loses contact with Gagarin. We've got sort of probe running, information gathering, hindrance, defensive, talking about how Shadowrunners can get involved in all this. Then we've got talk about Surge. Surge is a new type of genetic expression coming out of the Awakening, or a late part of it. So, where the Awakening created elves, dwarves, orcs and trolls, this is creating even more subtypes. So we can see here we've got somebody with a single eye, so they're a cyclops. We've got people with tails, with horns. We get people expressing some elements of the other types without becoming a full one. So you can get elf ears without becoming a full elf. You can get the orc tusks without becoming a full orc. And the book talks through the effects of this. So we've got Shadowrunners commenting on wake-up calls as the genetic expression starts, the science behind it, classifying Surge. You know, obviously this is the start of a new type of racism, whereas people don't like orcs and trolls, seeing them as beasts. It's even as bad when you start getting neighbours who are sprouting horns and tails. Probable causes of Surge. What is affected by Surge? Because Surge doesn't just affect humans, it's affecting animals as well, as more of the DNA, which only is affected when it's in the presence of magic, is now expressing itself because magic has reached a certain level. We've got the politics of hate, as I said. There are racism coming back into it. The newest rage, Surge, where it becomes trendy. We've got changelings talking about people who have expressed Surge elements. And we've got the new paranormal. So here's some of the animals. We've got demon rats. So going beyond the devil rats of the original Shadowrun, we've got even more violent versions. Glowmoss, horned bears, night mantas, so flying fish basically, Sangre del Diablo, shamblers. Over a dozen of these loathsome creatures have been reported in the swamps and sewers around the world. Then we've got hysteria, because while the magic returning to the world in greater levels and Surge happening and various other effects which we'll go on to, people are panicking, as people did in 2012 thinking the end of the world was coming, as people did about the Millennium Bug then. We've got people with hysteria about the comet turning back into the sky. So we've got various cults and how they're affecting the world. So we've got the Children of the Dragon here, who are obviously thinking about the assassination of Dunkelson. They see themselves as his heirs. The Cult of the Seventh Seal, the Atlantean Rebirth, Church of the Undying Light, the New Islamic Jihad. And then we've got ghost stories. Well, this focuses on a new dragon. Now, this is one of the most deep dives into Shadowrun lore. So, Dunkelson the Dragon became President of the United States, or the UCAS, the United Canadian American States, and then was assassinated, and the magic required to kill a great dragon caused a rift in space. Well, the Watergate Rift outside the hotel where he was assassinated has a dragon tear its way free, called Ghostwalker. And this section focuses on Ghostwalker coming out and being a bit berserk. It's a bit maddened, first of all. And it goes on a rampage in Denver after heading over. Now this is one of the elements I mentioned before in a previous video, because I covered the Denver sourcebook, which detailed how Denver was at the centre of various countries which the United States had split into, and was kind of like Berlin, where areas of the city were covered by various governments, and it was a centre for spying, because you could easily walk between different countries without really requiring too much passports. It was easy for information to flow through there, espionage between different countries. But all that changes, because Ghostwalker goes on the rampage and takes over Denver. The council now serves him, and it's a new independent state run by a dragon. Ghostwalker 1, Denver 0. And it goes into elements of that, how the different countries react to it, what the new status quo in Denver is, meeting of minds as people talk about it. We obviously got lots of Shadowland commentary here. May you live in interesting times. You've got people who are the High Council talking about Ghostwalker and what the political view of the leadership is and what the effects are. Massive segment on that. The state of the Front Range free zone. So what Denver is like now, which is nice. I always like the Shadowrun world evolving somewhat, but the fact that that chapter totally destroys virtually the entire boxed set of the Denver sourcebook annoys me a little, because I really liked that sourcebook. I thought it was one of the better ones released. Like Manna from Heaven. So we're talking about orichalcum. Basically, they've discovered new seams of the magical ore orichalcum, which is used for various magical equipment, magical focuses, weapon focuses, etc., all made out of orichalcum, and they have found massive seams of it, and it is worth a lot. I believe it mentions that 1 kilogram of orichalcum is worth 1 million yen. So an extremely valuable resource. And of course the corporations are focusing on it. It's talking about the orichalcum rush, so it's like a new gold rush. We've got hotspots. There's areas in Antarctica, Azamando, Avebury, England, Azania, Aslan, Nepal, Peru, Snowdonia in Wales, so lots of places in the UK. Areas in the UK, UCAS, the Ukraine, an unnamed island, and other sites. So it's talking about all the pressures there as different corporations race to exploit these new seams of orichalcum which have been discovered. Talking about different spirits and things which are being drawn by it, the effects of all this. We've got red sunset, red sunrise, talking about the effects that this magical year has. The Ring of Fire basically becomes more active and causes various major effects in Japan, which are magnified by the change of emperor in Japan as well, where a new child comes to the throne. Death of an emperor, we focus on that. Riding the tiger. California Uber Alice, because in the Shadowrun world, a chunk of California was taken over by Japan during the chaos of the fall of the United States of America. So we've got how these effects are carrying on to California, because obviously it's on the Ring of Fire as well. And it's controlled by Japan, which is undergoing its own political upheaval. So we go through all of that. Fallen is the City of Angels. The Yucatan War. So, support the oppressed people of the Yucatan. It goes through that. Basically a new area where fighting can break out, lots of magical spirits and things, and the effects of that. The poisoning of the earth, the tide turns. Gaia's wrath as it revenges for all the corruption happening to the earth. Spirits in flux. Aftershocks. So, after the year is out and all these things have happened, we talk about what's happening. So, Seeds of Rebellion. Talking about the Philippine Islands. The Sydney Manastorm intensifies. The Children of the Dragon update. What happens to them after the Year of the Comet. And then finally we're on to game information, which is the rules updates. So how to use the Year of the Comet. running the probe brace, so getting your players involved in that and exploiting that storyline. We've got Surge, how to handle Surge in your campaign. Surge in characters, whether they'll get, so they can make a test to see whether they get any other genetic expression from Surge, so their troll can gain further mutations from Surge. What happens to existing characters, Surge test, negative Surge effects, so the different things, mutations you can get from Surge. Altered eye colour, altered skin colour, astral hazing, critter spook, cyclops, dual-natured, tusks, unusual hair, vestigial tails. Positive Surge effects, you can get astral sight, dermal deposits, fangs, feline eyes, improved scent, improved taste, a long tail, a marsupial pouch. And keep your Uzi 3 in a pouch. Prehensile tail, resistance to diseases and poisons. Satyr legs, just various mutations your character can get. And we've got the stats for the various new critters, the devil rats, glow moss, horned bears, night mantas, etc. How the hysteria is affecting the world, and how to use the different cults. We've got using ghost stories, so talking about Ghost Walker emerging, how to use the effects of the Dunkelsen Rift, and Ghost Walker's Rampage, the Mile High Dragon City. Talk through magic and the Comet, the different effects. So as orichalcum starts to dry up, using natural orichalcum, the Shedim spirits, different rules for them, where they get their energy from, how to handle it in rules, their karma pools, their deathly aura, their inhabitations abilities, karma drain. The disaster in Japan, so the Ring of Fire speaks up. Child Emperor, Chaos in California, the War in the Yucatan, just going through all the effects that a games master can use, the world-changing events which are detailed earlier. The Philippine Rebellion, Sons of the Alamo, and adventure ideas, sort of finishing up the end here, followed by an index. You can easily find everything. Now, while it's not as focused as Bug City, obviously Bug City just deals with Chicago and the effects on that, and doesn't really detail the effects of insect spirits elsewhere in the world, Year of the Comet is a very broad source book, detailing very, very large changes to the world. Now, it's absolutely great if you want to make those changes, but it is a lot to introduce to your game. Now, the fact that the Comet's coming back, that there's the cults suddenly springing up, or seeming to spring up, the fact that you're making your players run to, your players roll to see if they've got surge expression, that they're starting to meet people which have different characteristics than they've ever seen before. It is quite a lot to go on, but that's just a big toolbox for a games master to have. So, even though it's not one of the classic Fazza books, I really, really rate this quite highly, because it's giving you a ton of things to make your game world far more interesting. So that was Year of the Comet for Shadowrun, and that won the poll with a massive 34% of the vote this week, way ahead of everything else. A full 10% of the joint second place entries of Infantry Weapons of the World for Twilight 2000 and Realms of Sorcery for WoW Fantasy Roleplay. As I said, they came in on 24%, not leaving much percentage points left for the other two entries, which were The Last Crusaders for Deadlands Hell on Earth, which came in on only 10%, and Immortal the Invisible War, which came in last on 7%, which is kind of sad because it's one of the last full games I've got to cover on the channel out of my collection, so it'd be nice to get to that. But also because I've discovered the newer editions are now available for free download. So it'd be nice to be able to cover that game and provide the links so you can see the newer version of the game. But anyway, only 7% you aren't interested in that yet, but it'll go back into a future poll. Now, as usual, all of those are cleared out of the poll, and we're going back into a Retro Adventures. So, this week, the entries mainly have been in previous polls, as they're adventures I would like to cover, but there's some variety in here. So we've got The Perfect Warrior for the Street Fighter RPG, Now, the Street Fighter RPG has been quite successful on the channel, but this adventure hasn't really cropped up particularly well in the polls. Which is sad, because as far as I know, it's the only released adventure separate to, I think the DM screen came with one, and obviously some of the source books had adventure ideas in them. But this was the only standalone adventure published for that game, so it'd be nice to cover it. Secondly, we've got Last Rites for Call of Cthulhu. Now, it's a nice beefy book, so it's going to be one of the more difficult ones to cover, but Call of Cthulhu is always pretty popular on the channel, and I always really enjoy covering it. So, let's see how that does. Third, we've got Death on the Reich for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, the second part of the Warhammer campaign. Now, while I think the first part, Shadows over Bogenhafen, is the high point of the campaign, an absolutely fantastic adventure that I have covered previously, the Warhammer campaign itself is so iconic and absolutely brilliant that I would love to cover the later parts carrying on through. And Death on the Reich, not being as good as Shadows over Bogenhafen in my opinion, doesn't make it bad. It is still outstandingly good. Next up, we've got Slaughter Margin for the Judge Dredd role-playing game, which came out in the same year as Death on the Reich. Now, it is one of the older Games Workshop adventures when they were at the high point of their skills, absolutely producing fantastic material. And it's a nice beefy box set. It comes with maps, the adventure, counters, etc. A very, very good adventure, which I'd love to cover. And finally, we've got The Last Warhulk for Alternity. Now, Alternity was TSR's role-playing game that they brought out in the late 90s, very close to the company going under and being taken over by Wizards of the Coast, at which point Alternity was quickly dropped. But Alternity was their science fiction version of Dungeons and Dragons. It was designed to be a rule set which you could have different settings for. So like Dungeons and Dragons has the Forgotten Realms, it has Dark Sun, it has Dragonlance, etc, etc, etc. Alternity was supposed to have various settings, and one of them was Star Drive. And The Last Warhulk is, I think, the only adventure ever published for that setting. Definitely one of very few. So it'd be great to cover that. On other channel-related stuff, well, the Discord channel's been very, very quiet. There's been a little chat in there, so if you'd like to pop in and ask anything, I'll be available for chats. I'll be available to answer any questions you've got. It'd be a good way of getting in touch with me. On other stuff, well, I'm having a look at the Patreon levels, because my video, which will come out later this week, will have access to some of the stuff covered in it as part of another Patreon level. So I'll be able to offer you extra stuff for different levels of Patreon. And let's see whether that's something you guys are interested in. I'd like to do it because it'd be something we can share together and something we can chat about. But let's see how that goes. Apart from that, nothing much to talk about. So, as usual, I think I've whittled on for quite long enough. So thank you very, very much for watching. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves. And I'll catch you later. Bye now.